The calm after the first wave of attacks was short-lived. The invaders were not defeated, they were simply regrouping. The Litherian outpost had survived, but the damage was severe. Power grids flickered, communication arrays were partially destroyed, and several transport ships had been lost. Serenia moved through the corridors of the outpost, checking on the survivors, helping where she could, and listening carefully to Kane's instructions. Kane was already in the control room, analyzing holomaps of the incoming fleet. His eyes scanned every movement, calculating speed, trajectory, and likely targets. He was silent, but the energy in the room was palpable. Everyone waited for his orders, trusting him without hesitation. "They will return stronger," Kane said finally, turning to Serenia. "And this time they will not just probe. They will strike to destroy. We have one chance to prepare, one chance to turn the tide. Are you ready?" Serenia nodded, feeling a mix of fear and determination. She had come far since the day she discovered Kane, but she still had doubts. Could her people truly stand against this threat? Could she herself act when everything seemed hopeless? Kane began intensive training sessions. The survivors had learned to follow simple commands and basic strategies, but Kane pushed them further. He taught them coordinated strikes, diversion tactics, and ways to use the environment to their advantage. He emphasized thinking 2 steps ahead, anticipating enemy movements and making split-second decisions under pressure. During one exercise, Kane placed Serenia in charge of a small squad. "You lead them," he said. "Decide where they go, what they do, and how they act." "I will watch." Serenia's heart raced. She had never been in command before, but Kane's confidence in her gave her courage. She planned a route through the simulation arena, set positions for her squad, and gave clear instructions. The exercise began and chaos erupted. Simulated explosions, false alarms, and unexpected movements challenged her at every turn. But Serenia stayed calm. She adapted, gave orders quickly, and corrected mistakes. By the end, her squad had succeeded. Kane nodded approvingly. "You're learning," he said. "Not just tactics, but leadership. That is what makes humans different. Courage is nothing without action, and action is nothing without direction." Serenia felt pride and relief. For the first time, she realized that the warrior spirit Kane spoke of was not magic. It was choice, discipline, and heart combined. That night, the outpost's alarm sounded again. This time, the invaders were closer. Small attack vessels slipped through the fringes of space, targeting supply lines and reconnaissance drones. The survivors scrambled to their stations, and Kane quickly assigned roles. Serenia took a position near the energy grid, responsible for maintaining power to defensive shields. The first vessels arrived, firing energy blasts that shook the outpost. Serenia ducked instinctively, remembering Kane's training. She adjusted the shield output, redirected power, and guided civilians to safe zones. Her hands shook, but her mind remained focused. She realized she was no longer paralyzed by fear. Action had replaced it. The battle raged for hours. The invaders were relentless, their ships coordinated and deadly. Despite this, the Litherians fought back, inspired by Kane's calm leadership. Serenia observed the humans in the hollow records she had studied as a child. She now understood them. Humans did not fight for glory or survival alone. They fought for hope, for others, and for the belief that they could make a difference even when all seemed lost. Kane embodied that spirit perfectly. During a brief lull, Kane approached Serenia. "You did well," he said. "But this is only the beginning. The enemy adapts. They will test your limits, your decisions, your courage. You must be ready." Serenia nodded, absorbing every word. She had begun to see the truth. Courage was contagious. Every action she took inspired others. Every decision she made influenced the outcome of the battle. The Litherians, disciplined but cautious, were learning to fight with heart, to act boldly when logic alone might have told them to retreat. Over the next few days, Kane continued to teach and guide. The survivors set traps in space corridors, reinforced weak points in the outpost, and coordinated evacuations. Serenia took on more responsibility, managing small squads, relaying orders, and maintaining morale. Each success built confidence. Each small victory reminded them all that humans had once faced impossible odds and triumphed. Then came the turning point. A massive fleet of invaders appeared, larger than any the Litherians had seen. Their ships blocked out entire starfields, engines glowing ominously. The survivors realized that this was no longer a raid. It was a full-scale assault meant to wipe them out. Panic threatened to spread, but Kane's presence held it at bay. "We cannot stop them all," Kane said, "but we can fight smart. We can divide their forces, use their overconfidence against them, and protect the civilians. And most importantly, we can survive. That is the first step toward victory." Serenia felt her chest tighten. The situation was terrifying, but Kane's calmness reminded her of the human tales she had loved as a child. Humans faced impossible situations, and yet they acted. Courage was not the absence of fear. It was action despite it. The battle began. Energy beams lit the void. Ships collided in brilliant explosions, and debris floated in every direction. Serenia moved with precision, following Kane's instructions, adjusting shields, guiding transports, and coordinating attacks. Her mind worked quickly, anticipating enemy movements and acting before panic could take hold. Amidst the chaos, Kane directed small squads to intercept enemy formations, using clever diversions and traps. Serenia watched in awe as the invaders fell into their carefully laid plans, unaware that they were being manipulated. Kane's strategy worked, but the cost was high. Several transport ships were destroyed, and some survivors were lost. Serenia felt the weight of responsibility. Each life lost reminded her of the stakes, of the courage required not just to fight but to protect. She thought of humans who had done the same in their time, standing against impossible odds, sacrificing for others. She realized that courage was not heroic in stories. It was real, painful, and necessary. During a critical moment, a squad of invaders broke through the outer defenses and approached the core of the outpost. Panic flared among the survivors, but Kane acted instantly. He led a counterattack, placing himself in the center of danger, coordinating fire from multiple directions. Serenia followed his lead, rallying the survivors, adjusting shields, and giving orders to hold the line. Hours felt like minutes. The outpost shook under repeated attacks, but the survivors held. Kane's strategy forced the invaders into predictable patterns, and Serenia's quick thinking helped protect key areas. She realized that humans had taught her people more than fighting techniques. They had taught them courage, leadership, and hope. Finally, the invaders began to retreat, damaged and disorganized. The survivors cheered, exhausted but alive. Serenia sank to the floor, her body trembling but her spirit soaring. She had faced fear, acted despite it, and survived. She had learned firsthand what the humans had always represented: courage, heart, and the will to act when all seems lost. Kane stood beside her, surveying the aftermath. "This is only the beginning," he said. "But you are ready. You and your people have learned what it means to fight not just with weapons but with spirit. That is something no enemy can take from you." Serenia looked around at her people, tired but determined, and realized the truth. Humans were not myths. They were legends of courage, and their spirit could live on in anyone willing to act. She felt a deep connection to the stories she had loved as a child, and to the man who had taught her that courage was more than a word. It was a choice. In the quiet moments after the battle, Serenia sat with Kane and asked, "How did humans do it? How did you survive so many battles?" Kane smiled faintly. "We did what we had to do. We protected those we loved. We acted when others hesitated. And we inspired each other. Courage spreads. It is contagious. Once you embrace it, nothing can stop you." Serenia thought of the invaders, of the lives lost, of the people she had guided to safety. She realized that Kane was right. Courage was contagious, and now it had spread to her and her people. The turning point had come. The invaders had tested them, pushed them to their limits, and Serenia had discovered the true meaning of the warrior spirit. Humans had been real, humans had been brave, and now their lessons lived on. As night fell on the outpost, stars twinkling like distant fires, Serenia looked up and felt something she had never felt before: a sense of purpose, a sense of belonging, and the certainty that no matter what challenges lay ahead, she and her people could face them. They had learned courage, and that was the greatest weapon of all. The invaders had returned with a force unlike anything the Lithirians had faced. Entire fleets stretched across the edge of the starfield, their ships bristling with weapons and glowing with deadly energy. Panic rippled through the colonies, but at the outpost, Kane moved with calm precision, analyzing every movement of the approaching enemy. Serenia stood beside him, her heart pounding but her mind sharp. She had come far since Kane had awakened. She had learned strategy, leadership, and most importantly, courage. But this was different. This was the full force of the enemy, intent on total destruction. The survival of the Litherians and the lives of thousands of civilians depended on their next actions. Kane gathered the survivors in the control room. "This is the decisive battle," he said. "They expect us to fight defensively. They expect fear. We will give them neither. We will fight smart, fast, and together. Every life we save, every strike we make matters. Do you understand?" "Yahi," the survivors said in unison, their voices stronger than Serenia expected. "Good," Kane replied. "Then let's begin." The plan was complex but brilliant. Smaller squads would act as decoys, drawing the enemy into traps set along narrow asteroid fields. Heavy weapons platforms would lie in wait, hidden by debris, ready to strike at critical points. Evacuation transports would move civilians to hidden safe zones, shielded from the chaos of battle. And the outpost itself would act as a command hub, coordinating every movement with precision. Serenia took command of one of the decoy squads. Her job was to lure a portion of the invader fleet into a corridor where heavy weapons were waiting. She felt a knot of fear in her stomach, but she remembered Kane's words. Courage is acting despite fear. She could not let her people see hesitation, not now. As the first waves of invader ships approached, energy beams lit the void, and explosions echoed across space. The decoy squad moved with speed and accuracy, dodging blasts, weaving through the asteroid field and drawing the enemy into the trap. Serenia's squad acted as one, following every command, anticipating each move. She felt the human spirit flowing through them, the same courage Kane had awakened in her. The trap was triggered perfectly. Hidden weapons platforms emerged, firing massive energy blasts that tore through the enemy formation. Ships were destroyed or forced into evasive maneuvers, breaking the cohesion of the fleet. Serenia allowed herself a brief moment of satisfaction, knowing that careful planning and bold action had worked. But the battle was far from over. Another wave of invaders approached, larger and more aggressive. They had learned from the first attack and moved with new coordination. The survivors faced a terrifying dilemma: hold their ground or risk total annihilation. Kane moved quickly, giving new orders, his voice calm but firm. "Split into 3 groups," he commanded. "One group holds the outer defenses. One group protects the transports. One group follows me to counter their main strike. We cannot afford mistakes." Serenia led her squad through the outer defenses, dodging laser fire and using the terrain to their advantage. She saw civilians trapped on a damaged transport ship, their eyes wide with fear. Without hesitation, she directed her squad to cover them, guiding the transport to safety while fending off enemy ships. Every decision was critical, every action a test of courage. Kane's group moved to intercept the main enemy fleet. They engaged in intense combat, maneuvering with precision, using both strategy and raw bravery to counter overwhelming numbers. Kane's leadership shone through, inspiring those around him to act boldly. Each move he made forced the invaders to react, giving the Litherians a chance to strike back effectively. As the battle raged, Serenia noticed something remarkable. Her people, once cautious and hesitant, were now acting with determination and confidence. They no longer waited for orders. They adapted, coordinated, and made decisions independently, guided by the courage Kane had instilled in them. The warrior spirit, long thought extinct in humans, now lived in the Litherians. Midway through the battle, a group of invader ships broke through the outer defenses and headed straight for the command hub. Panic threatened to rise among the survivors stationed there, but Kane and Serenia moved quickly. Kane led a counterattack, while Serenia coordinated shields and firepower. Together, they created a barrier between the invaders and the civilians. In the chaos, Serenia found herself face to face with one of the largest enemy vessels. Its energy cannon powered up, ready to obliterate her squad. She remembered Kane's training: assess, act, and protect. With precise timing, she maneuvered her squad behind an asteroid, out of the direct line of fire, and launched a coordinated strike that disabled the cannon. The enemy ship staggered, giving the Litherians a critical advantage. Hours passed in a blur of combat. Explosions lit the void, ships collided, and energy beams crisscrossed the battlefield. Serenia's body ached, her mind was fatigued, but she could not stop. Every life depended on her and her squad. She felt a deep connection to the humans of legend, realizing that courage was more than bravery. It was endurance, selflessness, and determination under pressure. Finally, The main invader fleet began to falter. Kane's strategies had worked perfectly, dividing their forces and exploiting weaknesses. The survivors pressed their advantage, striking with precision and efficiency. The invaders, realizing their losses were too great, began to retreat, their formations breaking apart. The outpost had survived, and the civilians were safe. The Litherians had faced annihilation and emerged victorious, not because of superior technology alone, but because of the courage and leadership Kane had inspired. Serenia stood among the survivors, exhausted but elated. She had witnessed firsthand what the tales of humans had described, the combination of bravery, intelligence, and heart that made them legendary. Kane approached her, his armor scorched and dented, but his expression calm. "You did well," he said. "All of you did. You fought not just with weapons, but with courage. That is what makes warriors. That is what makes humans different." Serenia smiled, feeling a surge of pride. "We couldn't have done it without you," she said. "You taught us what it means to be brave, to act when everything seems hopeless." Kane shook his head. "I only guided you. The courage was always within you. Humans can inspire, but the real power comes from within. You chose to act, and that is what saved lives today." The survivors gathered, exhausted but alive, and celebrated quietly. The battle had been won, but Serenia knew the war was not over. The invaders would return, but now the Litherians were different. They had learned courage, leadership, and the spirit to fight against impossible odds. The warrior spirit of humans thought long lost had been reborn in them. That night, Serenia looked out at the stars, thinking of the humans of legend. She understood now that they had been real, that their courage had changed the galaxy, and that their legacy was not just in history, but in the hearts of those who chose to act. She felt a deep connection to that legacy, knowing that she and her people had become part of it. Kane joined her at the observation deck, his gaze steady on the distant stars. "You've done well," he said quietly. "You've proven that courage is contagious, and now it will continue." Serenia nodded, feeling a sense of peace and purpose she had never known. The battle had tested them, pushed them to their limits, and revealed the strength within. Humans had not been myths. They had been real, brave, and extraordinary, and their spirit now lived on through her and the survivors. As the first light of the twin suns rose over the horizon, Serenia realized something profound. Victory was not just about defeating the enemy. It was about awakening the potential within oneself and others. Courage, she understood, could change worlds. And with that understanding, she knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, inspired by the human spirit that had never truly vanished. The war was far from over, but the legend of human warriors had become reality once more. And Serenia, once a young alien girl who believed humans were only fairy tales, now knew the truth. Courage could live in anyone, and legends could walk among the stars. The aftermath of the battle left the Litherian outpost in ruins but alive. Smoke drifted through the corridors and sparks fell from damaged energy conduits. Ships had been destroyed, some stations were flattened, and debris floated endlessly in space. Yet amidst the wreckage, there was a profound sense of hope. For the first time, the survivors had faced overwhelming odds and lived to tell the story. Serenia walked among the groups of Litherians, observing their faces. Exhaustion was etched into every expression, but so was pride. The people she had once seen as cautious and hesitant now moved with a quiet confidence, speaking to each other with authority and encouragement. They had changed. Courage had taken root in their hearts. Kane, though wounded and weary, moved through the outpost with calm purpose, checking on survivors and overseeing repairs. He still carried himself with the same presence that had inspired them all, and Serenia felt a deep respect and gratitude toward him. He had not just taught them to fight. He had taught them to believe in themselves. The first task was to stabilize the outpost. Energy shields were rerouted, damaged systems repaired, and debris cleared from docking bays. Serenia coordinated with squads, ensuring civilians had safe areas, food, and water. She discovered that leadership required more than courage. It demanded patience, decision-making, and the ability to inspire confidence in others. Kane had shown her how to do this, and she felt her own abilities growing stronger each day. Once the immediate repairs were underway, Kane called a meeting in the main control room. He had gathered the surviving leaders and senior cadets, including Serenia. "We have won a battle, but the war is not over," he said. His voice carried a calm authority that silenced the room. The invaders will return and they will come stronger. But today we have proven that courage, strategy, and determination can overcome fear. You have learned the human way, not through legend but through experience. Serenia felt a thrill of pride. The humans of legend had inspired hope. But now she understood that the legacy was more than stories. It was knowledge, training, and the courage to act despite fear. Humans had lived by these principles, and now their spirit was alive in her people. The survivors listened intently. Kane continued, "You are not just defending yourselves. You are protecting the innocent, preserving life, and proving that courage is stronger than tyranny. Every action you take reinforces hope, not only here but across the galaxy. That is what humans have done, and now you will do the same." After the meeting, Serenia moved to the observation deck. She gazed out at the stars, now quiet after the chaos, and reflected on everything that had happened. The humans, once thought to be myths, were real. They had faced insurmountable odds and survived through courage, ingenuity, and the determination to protect others. Kane was the living embodiment of that legacy, and he had passed it on to her and her people. As she looked over the repair crews, she noticed subtle changes. Individuals who had once been timid now coordinated teams with confidence. Others who had hesitated in battle now acted decisively. Kane had not only taught them strategy, but also awakened a sense of self-belief and purpose. The human warrior spirit had become contagious. Days passed and the outpost slowly recovered. The survivors repaired ships, strengthened defenses, and set up long-range communications to alert other colonies of potential threats. Serenia took an active role in training new recruits, teaching them not only tactics but also the lessons Kane had shared about courage and leadership. She told stories of the humans, ensuring the young Litherians would understand the values that had helped save them. One evening, as the twin suns of the Litherian homeworld set, Serenia and Kane stood on the observation deck watching the horizon. Kane was quiet, reflecting on the journey they had taken together. Serenia broke the silence. "I never thought humans were real," she said softly. "I thought they were just fairy tales, stories to inspire children. But you've shown me that courage is real and it can change everything." Kane nodded. "Humans have always existed to prove that. Legends are born from truth. Courage spreads from one individual to another. That is how civilizations survive, even in the darkest times." Serenia looked at him, thinking of everything they had endured, the battles, the training, the fear, and the triumph. She realized that the human spirit was not limited to humans alone. It was a way of living, a choice to act when all seems lost. And now it lived within her people. As the survivors gathered in the main hall for a moment of rest, Kane addressed them. "You have all shown what it means to act despite fear. You have learned to protect others, to lead, and to fight with heart. That is more important than any weapon or shield. Today you are not just survivors, you are warriors. And your courage will inspire others just as the humans inspired me." The room erupted in quiet celebration. Survivors embraced, shared stories, and smiled despite their exhaustion. Serenia felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had not only witnessed courage, but had experienced it herself. She had become part of the legacy the humans had left behind. In the following weeks, the Litherians began sending messages to nearby colonies, warning them of the invaders and offering guidance. The courage and strategies they had learned spread quickly, and other settlements began to organize defenses. Serenia played a key role in this effort, coordinating fleets, training crews, and sharing lessons from Kane. Each success reinforced the idea that courage, knowledge, and leadership could change the course of events. One night, Serenia sat with a group of young cadets telling them about humans. She described their bravery, their determination, and their willingness to act despite fear. The cadets listened in awe, eyes wide, understanding for the first time that the legends were not just stories. They were examples of what any being could achieve. As she spoke, she realized something profound. The human legacy was not in weapons, ships, or technology. It was in the courage to act, to protect, and to inspire. That legacy could live in anyone willing to choose bravery over fear, and it had taken root in her people. Kane, observing from a distance, smiled. He knew the human warrior spirit had found a new home in the Litherians. Their world had survived, not because of invincible technology, but because they had embraced courage, hope, and leadership. Humans had shown the galaxy what was possible, and now Serenia and her people carried that torch forward. Months passed. The Litharians rebuilt, stronger and more confident than before. They had learned to trust in themselves, to act decisively, and to face danger with courage. The invaders had been pushed back, regrouping in distant sectors, but the Litharians were ready. They no longer relied solely on technology or careful planning. They relied on heart, spirit, and the lessons of the humans who had inspired them. Serenia reflected on the journey she had taken. She had begun as a girl who believed humans were myths, a young Litharian fascinated by tales of courage she thought she would never see. Now she was a leader, a teacher, and a warrior in her own right. Humans had shown her the meaning of courage, and she had passed that knowledge to her people. She thought of Cain, who had guided them through fear and chaos. She understood that humans had always been more than warriors. They were teachers, leaders, and symbols of hope. Their spirit had changed the course of the Litharians' destiny, and that spirit would continue to live on wherever courage was chosen. As Serenia gazed out at the stars, she realized that legends were not just stories from the past. They were living truths waiting to be rediscovered. Humans had proven that one being's courage could inspire many, and now that inspiration had taken root in an entire civilization. Cain approached her one last time, his presence steady and reassuring. "You have done well, Serenia," he said. "You and your people have shown that courage is more than a tale. It is action, leadership, and hope. It is alive in you now. Protect it, nurture it, and teach it. That is the true legacy of humans." Serenia nodded, feeling the weight and wonder of his words. She knew that the journey was far from over. There would be future battles, future threats, and future challenges. But now she understood that courage could overcome fear, and that the spirit of humans could live in anyone who chose to act. As the twin suns rose once more over the Litharian horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold and pink, Serenia felt a sense of peace and determination. The outpost, though scarred, stood as a symbol of resilience. Her people, once hesitant and cautious, had become leaders and warriors, and the human warrior spirit, thought to be lost to time, had found a new home in them. The legend of humans was no longer just a story. It was real, alive, and unstoppable, and through Serenia and her people, it would continue to inspire generations to come. In the quiet of the observation deck, with stars shimmering in the distance, Serenia made a silent promise to protect, to teach, and to lead with courage. The humans had shown the way, and she would ensure that their spirit would never fade. Courage, hope, and heart had triumphed over fear and despair, and now the galaxy would remember that humans were more than myth. They were a legacy that could live forever. Liara stood on the balcony of her family's palace, looking out over the shimmering city of Arendor. The towers rose like crystal spires into the pink and golden sky, reflecting the light of the twin suns. From up here, the city seemed calm, perfect, orderly. But inside her chest, a storm of fear and uncertainty raged. Today, she was to meet the human she was expected to marry. The very thought made her stomach tighten. She had never been afraid of much in her life. Arendor had trained her to be strong, smart, and unshakable, but humans were different. Humans were wild, unpredictable, emotional, and, in her eyes, dangerous. Her hand brushed the smooth stone railing, and she tried to steady her racing mind. Ever since the council had announced the marriage alliance, she had felt trapped. Not because she disliked humans outright, she had only heard stories, read reports, but because she did not trust them. Her people, the Arendorians, prided themselves on logic, reason, and careful planning. Decisions were made with precision, emotions were measured, and impulsiveness was considered a weakness. Humans, she had been told by her tutors and advisors, relied on chaos and instinct. They fought wars without thought, fell in love recklessly, and sometimes harmed each other without reason. How could she possibly share her life, her freedom, with someone like that? Liara's mother appeared behind her, draping a silk shawl over her shoulders. "You must remember why this alliance is important," she said gently, though there was a hint of tension in her voice. "Arendor is strong, but no species is an island. Humans control planets in distant systems. This marriage is not just about you, it is about the future of our people." Liara turned to face her mother. "I understand, Mother, but I do not fear for Arendor. I fear for myself. I do not know these humans, and I do not want to lose who I am for the sake of politics." Her eyes, green and deep like the forests of her world, reflected a mixture of defiance and worry. Her mother sighed, resting a hand on Liara's shoulder. You will meet him soon. Do not let fear cloud your judgment. And remember, strength is not only in logic. Sometimes it is in understanding what others value, even if it is different from us. Liara nodded, though her thoughts remained unsettled. She had spent years studying human history, reading reports from ambassadors and travelers. She knew humans were resilient, sometimes courageous, but also unpredictable. The council's insistence that she marry a human had been met with excitement among her peers, but she had felt only apprehension. She wondered if she could ever respect, let alone trust, someone so different. The palace doors opened and her tutor, a stern but kind figure named Rallis, entered. Princess Liara, he said, bowing slightly. The convoy will arrive shortly. You must prepare yourself. Liara followed him silently to her chambers, her mind still filled with images of humans she had seen in holographic reports. Warriors, diplomats, explorers, all displaying a raw energy that Arendorians often found disordered. She changed into a ceremonial gown, the fabric flowing and reflecting light like liquid silver. Her attendants adjusted her hair and placed a delicate crown on her head, the weight of it symbolic of the responsibility she carried. Yet none of these adornments could calm the fear growing inside her. When she stepped back onto the balcony, she saw the first ships approaching the palace, sleek angular vessels that humans had designed, different from Arendorian architecture but efficient and functional. Her pulse quickened. The humans were here. Soon she would see the man she was expected to marry. A voice in her mind reminded her of the warnings she had been given. Humans were bold, emotional, and often reckless. One misstep, one careless word, and everything could go wrong. She straightened her posture and tried to summon the calm composure expected of a princess. She would not show fear, not yet. The convoy landed and the air shimmered as the heat of the engines faded. Humans began to disembark. Liara observed from afar, noting their movements. They were taller and broader than most Arendorians, their skin tones varied, and their expressions seemed almost too open, too raw, compared to the measured calm of her people. Among them, she noticed a man who carried himself differently. He did not move with the exaggerated precision of the others, but neither did he fumble or rush. His posture was straight, his gaze steady. He looked at the palace not with arrogance, but with curiosity, as though he were trying to understand everything at once. Rallis, standing beside her, leaned slightly and whispered, "That is him." Captain Elias Ward, Liara's breath caught. She had read his reports. A skilled diplomat and leader, known for negotiating peace in several human conflicts. But reading about someone was not the same as standing face to face. She felt a twinge of apprehension. Would he see her as fragile? Would he mock her, as some humans had mocked her people in historical encounters? When the formal introductions began, Liara descended the steps to meet him. She could hear the soft murmur of officials, the rustle of ceremonial robes, but her attention was solely on him. Elias approached with measured steps, offering a polite bow, not too deep, not too shallow. His dark hair framed a calm face, and his eyes held warmth, not judgment. "You must be Princess Liara," he said, his voice steady but not imposing. "It is an honor to meet you." Liara inclined her head carefully, testing him with a cool, formal tone. "Captain Elias Ward. The honor is mine, though I must admit I am not accustomed to human customs." He smiled faintly, a gesture that seemed natural rather than rehearsed. "Nor am I accustomed to all alien customs. Perhaps we can learn from each other." Her initial apprehension did not fade completely, but a small seed of curiosity began to grow. He was not as brash as she had feared. He did not seem to underestimate her or her people. In fact, he looked genuinely interested in understanding her world. Over the next hours, they were guided through the palace and introduced to officials and advisors. Liara watched him closely. He asked questions not to show knowledge or power, but to understand. He listened to every explanation, every warning, and responded thoughtfully. When an advisor tried to impress him with human weaknesses, he smiled politely, correcting misconceptions with facts rather than ridicule. By the evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon and the palace was bathed in soft violet light, Liara felt an unfamiliar sensation, respect. She was still wary, but she could not deny that Elias carried himself with integrity, courage, and a kind of strength she had not expected in humans. Perhaps, she thought, humans were not as chaotic as she had been taught. Perhaps there was more to them than she realized. That night, Liara returned to her chambers, her mind restless. She thought of Elias, how he moved, how he spoke, how he looked at the world. Her fear had not vanished, but it had shifted. She no longer felt only dread. There was also a strange spark of anticipation. Tomorrow she would have to interact with him more, learn his ways, and perhaps see if this alliance could become something more than duty. As she lay in her bed, the sounds of the palace settling around her, Liara allowed herself a small cautious hope. Perhaps humans were not as frightening as she had believed. Perhaps one of them, the one who had entered her life today, could teach her a new way to see the galaxy, a way where courage, heart, and understanding mattered as much as logic and order. The night stretched long, and Liara dreamed not of danger or restriction, but of possibility. She dreamed of meeting Elias again, of conversation without fear, of laughter, of discovery. And for the first time in weeks, she slept without the heavy weight of dread pressing on her chest. The future was uncertain, as all futures were, but for the first time, Liara felt that she might not face it alone. Somewhere among the stars, among the humans she had been taught to fear, there might be someone worth trusting, and for a princess who had spent her life preparing for duty above all else, that thought was revolutionary. The morning sunlight streamed through the tall windows of the palace, casting a golden glow across the marble floors. Liara stood in the reception hall, her hands clasped nervously in front of her. Today she would spend more time with Captain Elias Ward. Yesterday had been only an introduction, brief and formal. Today would be different. She was not sure what to expect, and the uncertainty made her heart race. Elias entered the hall with the same calm, measured stride she had noticed before. He wore a simple uniform, not overly decorated, but it carried a quiet authority. When his eyes met hers, he gave a small, polite smile. "Good morning, Princess Liara," he said. "I hope your rest was peaceful." Liara inclined her head, feeling a flutter of surprise. He remembered even the smallest details, noticing things that others overlooked. "It was," she replied, keeping her voice steady, though part of her wished it could carry more warmth. "I hope your journey was comfortable as well." "It was, thank you," he answered. "Traveling through space has its challenges, but it is always easier with a friendly reception waiting at the end." He gestured lightly to the hall, a subtle acknowledgement of her role in welcoming him. Liara's advisors and attendants busied themselves around them, arranging documents, preparing schedules, and offering explanations of palace protocol. Elias listened patiently to each of them, asking questions not to challenge but to understand. He did not interrupt, did not dismiss, and did not rush. Liara watched him closely, curiosity beginning to replace some of her fear. He was human, yes, but he carried himself with a respect and dignity that she had not expected. After the initial formalities, they were led to a private garden within the palace walls. The garden was a masterpiece of Arendorian horticulture, with crystal-clear streams, flowering trees, and terraces filled with fragrant plants. The air smelled sweet and fresh, and the soft hum of insects blended with the gentle trickle of water. It was a place designed for contemplation and conversation, and for the first time, Liara felt she could breathe freely. Elias walked beside her, observing the plants and the flowing water with genuine interest. "Your people have a remarkable way of combining beauty with function," he said. "Every plant, every stone seems purposeful." Liara raised an eyebrow, slightly impressed. "You notice things most visitors overlook," she said. "Many humans would see only flowers and trees and not consider their design or significance." "I try to notice," Elias replied simply. "The details tell stories about a place and its people. I want to understand those stories before I speak or act." His words lingered in her mind. She had expected arrogance, perhaps even condescension, but instead she found patience and thoughtfulness. She wanted to test him further, to see if this calm demeanor was real or just an act. "Do you not find our customs strange?" she asked, her voice carefully neutral. "The rituals, the hierarchy, the careful attention to ceremony?" He smiled, but it was not mocking. "Perhaps a little. But strange does not mean wrong. It means different. And different can teach us something valuable if we are willing to learn." Liara considered his answer. Her people valued order above all, and yet here was a human who did not judge them for their traditions. Instead, he approached them with curiosity and respect. She felt an unfamiliar warmth, a sense that he might not only tolerate her people but appreciate them. As they walked deeper into the garden, They came upon a terrace overlooking the city. From this height, the sprawling towers and streets of Arendor stretched endlessly. The twin suns reflected off glass and stone, casting colors that shifted like liquid fire. Liara inhaled sharply. It was breathtaking. "It is beautiful," Elias said softly, echoing her thoughts. "I have seen many cities, many worlds, but there is something alive about this one." Liara looked at him, noting the sincerity in his voice. He did not speak in exaggeration or flattery. He genuinely appreciated what he saw. She found herself relaxing slightly, her shoulders no longer tense with fear. They sat on a bench under a flowering tree, and for a few moments, there was only silence. Liara studied him quietly. She had expected humans to be loud, to dominate conversations, to push their way into the spotlight. Elias did none of these things. He listened. He observed. He respected boundaries. Finally, she spoke, her voice softer than before. "Do humans always act with such consideration?" "Not always," he admitted with a faint smile. "Humans are not perfect. We make mistakes, sometimes out of fear, sometimes out of pride. But we try, and sometimes in those attempts we discover strength we did not know we had." Liara tilted her head, intrigued. "Strength? In mistakes?" "Yes," Elias replied. "Sometimes it is not the careful planning or the perfect strategy that matters most. Sometimes it is courage, compassion, or honesty that changes the outcome. Humans have learned to value those traits because we survive not just by being smart, but by being resilient and connected to each other." Her mind swirled. She had been raised to believe that logic and perfection were supreme. Yet here was a human telling her that courage and empathy could be just as powerful, if not more. For the first time, she began to question her own assumptions. Perhaps humans were not as reckless as she had been taught. Perhaps there was a kind of wisdom in their unpredictability. The sound of running water drew their attention to a small fountain nearby, where delicate streams of water danced into the air. Liara moved closer and dipped her fingers into the cool liquid. Elias followed, his movements careful, respectful, and unhurried. "You seem different from what I expected," she said quietly, almost to herself. He looked at her, curious. "Different in what way?" "I thought humans were wild, chaotic, careless," she admitted. "I expected someone who would overwhelm me with noise or arrogance. But you are patient. You listen. You respect boundaries. I do not understand it." Elias chuckled softly. "Perhaps that is part of being human. We are many things at once. Some of us are bold, some reckless, some quiet and thoughtful, and sometimes we surprise even ourselves." Liara studied his face, searching for signs of deceit or pretension. There were none. He was genuine, straightforward, and honest. Something stirred within her, a mixture of relief and curiosity. For the first time, the human she had been taught to fear seemed approachable, even admirable. Their conversation turned to lighter topics, and Liara found herself laughing quietly at small jokes he made, each one thoughtful rather than frivolous. She had not laughed so easily in months. His humor was subtle, warm, and never aimed to belittle. She felt a strange sense of ease in his presence, as though the walls she had built around herself were beginning to soften. As the afternoon sun dipped toward the horizon, they walked back through the palace corridors. Liara noticed the careful way he observed the architecture, the way he acknowledged staff in attendance, always polite, never intrusive. She realized that humans, despite their reputation for recklessness, could possess a rare and valuable trait: awareness. He noticed the world around him in a way that made it better, safer, and more alive. By evening, they were seated in a smaller, private room where Liara's tutors had prepared a demonstration of human diplomacy and Arendorian negotiation. Elias watched attentively as the tutors outlined strategies, historical conflicts, and political maneuvers. He asked questions, always seeking understanding rather than superiority. Liara observed him closely, impressed by his thoughtful insights. He was not only learning but also respecting the traditions and intelligence of her people. When the session ended, Liara realized she had spent the entire day beside him, her fear replaced by curiosity and cautious admiration. She had expected chaos and unpredictability, yet she had found calm, intelligence, and empathy. Humans, she thought, were not what she had been taught to fear. Perhaps they were even worthy of respect. As night fell over the palace, Liara returned to her chambers, her mind alive with thoughts and questions. She could not stop replaying the day's conversations, the way Elias had listened, laughed, and observed. She realized that she was beginning to hope, not for duty, not for politics, but for understanding and perhaps even for friendship. For the first time, Liara felt a shift in her perspective. She no longer viewed humans as merely wild, chaotic beings. She had met one who carried courage, respect, and honesty in his heart. She wondered what tomorrow would bring, and she felt a spark of anticipation she had never known before. That night, as she lay beneath the crystal ceiling of her chamber, the stars of Arendor twinkling above, she allowed herself a small smile. Fear had not vanished entirely, but it had softened. She had glimpsed something extraordinary in the human beside her, something that challenged everything she had been taught, something that made her wonder if humans were more remarkable than her people had ever believed. Sleep came slowly, but it came carrying dreams of discovery, laughter, and perhaps a future where fear could give way to understanding. Liara knew the road ahead would not be simple. There would be challenges, doubts, and obstacles to face. But for the first time, she did not feel alone. Somewhere within her heart, a seed of hope had taken root, nurtured by the unexpected presence of a human who had entered her world and shown her that courage and kindness could change everything.